welcome everyone back to the Power Platform UX UI Allies user group. So UX UI Allies stands for User Experience, User Interface, and Accessibility, which is what we're all about. Today is a December call, so it's somewhat Christmassy. So thank you, Anya and Mark, for being somewhat Christmassy. I think George and I forgot that we should do that. But yeah, welcome everyone. Really looking forward to today. I'm just going to go through some house rules that we always go through each time, and I'll just skip through them pretty quickly so that I don't bore you to death with them. Basically, we're a Microsoft user group. We follow the Microsoft Event Code of Conduct. It's on your screens at the moment. Feel free to take a screenshot of it right now. But essentially, if you're concerned about any behavior during this event, feel free to get in touch with us or with Microsoft. And there's an email address and a phone number there. So in the meeting today, we're asking everyone to be welcoming, respectful, and considerate of others. We would like people to express their viewpoints, but please just consider all sides on differences of opinion and be respectful. Feel free to ask questions. Maybe don't interrupt the speakers unless they say that they're happy for that. You can always raise your hand and have a chat, or you can always use the chat feature. We also have a Q&A enabled. And if you want to know what tools and resources that you want to know more about, just let us know. So the call is being recorded. So if you don't want to be shown in the recording, then of course turn your cameras off and don't appear. But feel free to come on if you do want to. Feel free to use the meeting reactions. It's always good to gauge like what's resonating with people through the meeting reactions. And of course, please use the chat as well. And as always, we have our call for speakers. So there's a QR code if you want to scan it with your phone, or there's a link that we can put in the chat. Maybe Anya, you could put that in the chat. And if you go to that, then you can submit your sessions to speak on this call. And I've whizzed through that now, so we get to the exciting parts, which is initially we're starting off with George Doubinski, and he's talking about the fact that there's no such thing as left-handed chopsticks, which is very interesting, huh? Gets you thinking. It's an inclusivity guide, and I'm looking forward to this because I absolutely love accessibility and inclusivity, and it's actually a huge topic. There's so much about it. And then we're moving on to Mark Smith, and with Mark, we're going to have a very different kind of topic or session to what we usually do, because this is going to be more of an interview style. And it's titled The Experience Shift, an interview on AI, UX, and accessibility. And yeah, we're going to be covering some interesting topics within that, but I'll let you wait in suspense for that one. So George, if you're ready, please feel free to take it away. I'll stop sharing.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Excellent.
So let me just begin. So welcome, everyone. And let me just start from the fact that, it's a thing. It's a real thing. It's about me. No, sorry, it's not about me, but I've been around since CRM3. That's basically all people need to know. But yes, it is a real thing, and I'm just showing on camera. That's a let me see if I can see the camera. That's a real thing. That's Chopsticks I bought while in Korea, and they are real. And we're gonna talk about what they're for. Most of you probably can guess, but we'll take it from here. So Chopsticks, by definition, are inclusive. It's like left and right, and here we create a special device. We often do that for everyday design. And you know yourself that there are a lot of examples when everyday design creates something that is better for everyone. And examples include handles, door handles versus knobs, because knobs are difficult for people with less mobile wrists. For people who carry 2 boxes or carry children, you can use your foot. Who didn't use their foot to open the door? And another good example is OXO, the whole lineup of OXO tools. The 'Good Grip, how it all started, the 'Good Grip was designed by the guy who founded OXO for his wife, who had arthritis, severe arthritis, and she loved to cook and she couldn't open cans. So he designed a can opener, and turns out everyone loves them. So same goes, and then it goes on to peelers that actually ambidextrous peelers, and suddenly everyone, including chefs, using them because they are better. Classical example with the curb cuts. It was designed for wheelchair users, but suddenly everyone using them, like people with trolleys, skateboarders. I'm not sure if that's a good use, but people in people with prams and so forth. Caption is an interesting one. It was designed obviously for hearing impaired users, but suddenly there are new audiences, people in the libraries, people on the train who've left their headphones at home, people in a quiet workspace, and so forth. Sometimes you just used to understand it better. Learning. I was watching a lot of movies with captions when I was learning English. And that's a good example.
And he grew up. He started working with his father.
Oh, I didn't share the sound. You can't hear it, right? Let me reshare with the sound because hold on a sec. Oh, maybe you can. Hold on a sec. How do I stop this? Here we go. Let me just stop sharing. I'll reshare with the sound, and that will be much better. Now you should be able to hear what this guy is saying.
When he grew up, he started working with his father, but later he left and began traveling around the USA. He was greatly impressed by the scenes of the working slaves and he worked as a.
So that's basically the gist of it. That you're getting used to it, and so sometimes subtitles is on all the time. So the idea is when you design for edge cases use and you design for left and right, then everyone in the middle benefits, and you get unexpected use, unexpected appreciation.
When he grew up.
This is one of the best examples of thinking, creative thinking around accessibility, and proudly presented you by Guide Dogs New South Wales ACT, which is kind of half an hour walk from my place. It's I think, yeah, about 10 minutes by bus from my place. They've got office there, and there is blind female content creator. She goes around, she shows people things, and she showed that on LinkedIn and on Instagram. So she walked into the toilet, and it's typical female toilet and shower, and you can see Braille down the bottom. So when it's tactile, so you know it's a toilet. So you visually impaired, you can touch, and you know the toilet. And the question is, now what? You walk into the toilet and you have no idea what the layout is. Where are the stalls? Where's the accessible stall? Where are the basin? Where are the trash cans or rubbish bins, as we call them? And this is what they created. They created actually a Braille map of the entire toilet. So you can actually touch it and feel it, and you know where things are. This is kind of brilliant design, and it shows accessible stall, basins, soap, dryer, everything, so you don't electrocute yourself, and it's on the wall, so you know where to go once you're in. So this is brilliant design. The question is, why not everyone's doing it? I mean, they doing it because most of their visitors, or a large percentage of their visitors, would have some kind of visual impairment, right? By definition. So why not everyone doing it? I've seen a lot of kind of toilets with the braille on them. I think it's now standard in New South Wales, at least where I live, for public toilets. But and the answer is, like, one is ignorance. People just don't care, right? Narrow-mindedness, another reason. But unfortunately, the third reason is one of the most prevalent. It's just cost. Unfortunately, we have costs. We can put price on everything, including, it unfortunately includes human life. Like if you have dangerous roads, I've got dangerous roads around my place. Why don't we put like 2 meters walls around it like we do on highways and, make people to cross underground or overpasses and so on? That's a simple cost. It's how many lives we save versus the cost of building it all. Like, are we prepared to invest $3 billion to save one life? And unfortunately, the answer is no. So, but that shouldn't stop you from like expanding your mind and say, how can I do better for my users? Another example is, some of you may relate. This is what I call why I don't play golf, because every time I go in, there are no clubs for me, or they the worst clubs ever. The reason is simple. I'm lucky one, I'm ambidextrous, and I learned to play. I played games with the stick, like ice hockey, when I was a kid, and I played it left-handed. And I would play golf left-handed. I would play cricket left-handed, and I would play golf left-handed. There are no left-handed golf clubs, or the ones that are there to rent are just the most horrible golf clubs ever. My mouse, why I use my right hand? Because my favorite mouse is this. I think it's a fourth one I bought. I just keep running through them. It's shaped to the hand, and there used to be a left-handed one. And back to cost, Logitech stopped creating one, because only 10% of people left-handed. So they stopped creating one. Notebooks is another example. They not created. Has anyone seen a left-handed notebook? I'm sure they do exist, right? I'm sure they exist. Technically, you can turn one upside down and be fine with it, but now this is straight into user interface and input disasters. There's basically, I've seen scroll-only calendars, and the older you get, it's like, what's the date of birth? And it shows like 2025 as a year, and it's a scroll. And you just go like, especially like on the phone with these wheels, and you never know when to stop. And it feels like playing roulette. No typing, absolutely terrible keyboard support, and no screen reader support. It's like when you have to click into months, year, and then you have to click into year, and then you scroll to the year, and then you all the way back. It's absolutely terrible. But this one takes the cake. Someone said sometimes you need to enter months and year. And someone said that was the example of the control. They listed 10 years of months and years in the scroll down. This is a real control, right? So what can you do? Let me just flip into my browser. And let's just go ahead and I'll just show you in HTML, like bare HTML, what you can do. Let me just grab what I want to do. So the simple one, you want to design a date, right? So you can do simple stuff like form. Let's close this one, form, input equal date. It's already infinitely better. It does have calendar if I'm using mouse, but I can type if I want to. Right? Input, to me, this calendar, it's like, 8 keystrokes. I would type my birthday. It would be so much faster than using calendar. But if you feel like weeks sometimes important, you want to see, is it Monday, is it Tuesday? Like birthday is fine. You don't care whether you were born on Tuesday or Thursday, unless you're Jesus and it's Sunday, right? So it's but when you flying, when I'm picking up, for example, when I'm booking a ticket, I know Wednesday ticket is going to be cheaper and I don't care. So I would pick Tuesday or Wednesday to fly out, for example, right? So so that becomes kind of important. Having calendar sometimes is important. But if I want to say, oh, I only want months because expiration, like on our Medicare cards, expiration is in months. All I have to do is like type equal months, and before you know, right, it's a month. I can put January or June, and I can type a year. So like July 20. Oh, that's goes July. That, and then tab and type a year. So that makes it super easy. Then people say, how do I want restrict the numbers, and people use JavaScript and restricting number input and all. They use kind of patterns and all sort of stuff. All you have to do is to say that the input type equal number, and suddenly you are here and I'm typing my keyboard, nothing comes out. When I type the number comes out, right? Super easy. But sometimes you want better control for mobile devices. So on mobile devices, you go slightly different. You go with something like this. So why do you want to go? Input mode numeric and gives you this nice keypad control, right? So you can enter like a phone keypad. Pattern gives you a larger keys. That's kind of interesting. I think it's specific to iOS devices, but Android also picked it up. So it gives you like big keys you cannot miss. It's literally like a phone size, and that's why you're saying type text, because you want to avoid those up and down scroll controls. But type text input mode numeric is good enough. So you really need to play with simulators to do these patterns. Now let me go back to presentation, and this is the golden standard. If you want to see golden standard in accessibility, you go to .gov.uk site. Seriously, it's absolutely. I browse it and I always show to people as an example how to do it. I think it's worth just going there. I started applying for something. I don't even remember for what I'm applying. But this is their date control. I just type, right? They will validate it. Yeah, so they're saying must include real months and so on. This is where they have very interesting choices how to pick up a city council. They're saying you can enter your postcode, and I have no idea. So I'm saying I want to select from the list, and suddenly I'm none the wiser because I have no idea where the things are in UK, but I can suddenly pick up and continue. This is kind of brilliant. Everything about this form, it's so easy to read. I don't have any problems accessing like smaller screens, larger screens, but this form is like absolutely delight to fill in. I would go and fill in this form every day if I had to. It's literally, if you want to see what good design looks like, go to this site. Oh, and they tell you cannot be more than 120 years old if you leave this one. So I guess someone needs to test it. Yeah, I already mentioned that. That's what the keyboard looks like on iPhone. So you get with this input control, you get like a full-fledged keyboard. Can't go wrong, right? The challenge is how you do it. Try navigating your favorite UI, developer design, whatever your UX is. Try navigating without a mouse. And I tried Power Automate, and I have to say, yeah, it's usable. Sometimes if your Power Automate is long, like you've got 35 actions, because it needs to display an input from every previous action, when you get to the last one and you try to pick up a field from somewhere, especially if you've got like get records from Dataverse and you've got 200 fields for each get record, you've got an enormous list to tab through, but it's doable. And it actually teaches you, keep your Power Automate compact. Do not do select all. Select the fields you need. Then you'll be better off when it comes to selecting fields in dropdown in Power Automate. So if we take a look at, for example, this one. Give it a second. That's a wrong screen. That one. So when I go to that screen and I picked up one of my files and I can actually use, I'm using keyboard now and I'm tabbing through things. And you see, I don't have a lot, but you do have certain fields. You can tab through that. So that would teach you like select only what you need because you don't want to tab through 200 contact fields, for example. But hats off, not hats off to the guys who created this new UI. The previous UX actually wasn't that good for accessibility. This one is so much better. So hats on to them. Hats off. Why keep saying hats on? Mark, you're confusing me because you wear a hat. Visual simulation, Chrome development tools. It simulates vision impairment. I don't know how many people use it, but here's the quick example what it looks like if I go into my screen. Same screen. Remember this fiddle, and let me just grab something. And I'll put it just before this control. And it says fields are required. This field is required. Okay, that's great. So what I can do now, if you display a rendering tab, then you can scroll down and see the emulate vision deficiencies. And you say, protanopia, no red. Well, that doesn't look good. Suddenly it's not red. It does depend on degree of your impairment. Some people can tell the difference and saying, this shade of gray is red. I know it's called red, but you're forcing them to think about it. So definitely add an asterisk. Would it kill you? You know, would it kill you to add an asterisk to a field? This field is required with an asterisk. No. There's some others, like you can say no green, no color at all, which is none better. This is complete disaster with no colors. But this one is interesting. Blurred vision. This one, no, can't do it. But let's go to the favorite site and let's do rendering on this one and scroll down and say blurred vision. That's kind of readable. I can see it. And I go to the next screen. It's readable. It's okay. It's not perfect, but yes, the blurred vision, it's simulating, but it's fine. I can make sense out of it. I can read it. So that's why I'm saying, like, go to this site and check it out because it's absolutely golden standard. Okay, let's continue. So one of my pet peeves is emails and LinkedIn. And I became aware only a couple of years ago. I was introduced to a guy who is lawyer by trade, fully qualified lawyer, and he's blind. And I asked him, like, what would it make a better email? And his answer was interesting. He said, whatever makes better email for you would make better email for me. For example, when people quote something, a never-ending email thread, and they're saying, "Oh, see below," and you say, "Where's below?" And you start scrolling, and then say, "My comments in red." We already seen what red looks like, right? And you scroll, which one? This one or that one? And then the email becomes too big to even for a Copilot to digest and say, yeah, too big, I give up. Stop doing that. Would it kill you? Like if there are a couple questions in there, just copy paste them into your answer and do your answers just in line, but right in your body. So I don't have to scroll. Make it easy for me to read. Right, multi-column layouts, a disaster, especially when on the phone and things like that. Images with no alt descriptions or click here links. Right, what am I clicking on? Just describe, just monthly report and hyperlink it. LinkedIn, fancy Unicodes and overused icons. I have to say, credit to Apple. I couldn't reproduce. Apple screen readers are fine. They understand those bold and italic, which are Unicode. But I've been told, like, you put it through JAWS, which is Windows. I think it's Windows only. Screen readers. Some screen readers don't understand those, so it's Unicode gibberish for them. And overuse of emojis, like you've got the list and it's checkbox. If you've got like standard radio buttons, screen reader just go. It reads the list. It says it's a list and it reads the list. You've got emojis that says green checkbox and then it reads green checkbox and say how many green checkboxes you might have. So emojis are fine to express emotions, but don't overuse them for lists and things like that. And just be careful with those bold italic. Just put them through some testing. So for next quarter, challenge for you guys, build one feature with inclusivity as a primary design goal. Measure impact on all users and share the learning. For example, new date of birth capture that works with keyboard and mouse. This accessible toilet map equivalent, an onboarding, some help pattern for users, a map of the building with the layout where the kitchen is, where no-go zones like boss's office and things like that. So you can help them out. So measure impact, it's like time to complete. How many people complain? How many people lodge support tickets? Rated with Lighthouse, the tool inside Chrome. It's Chromium, so it works. My browser is Edge, so tools work. And share the learning. At least one we didn't realize anecdote and new patterns to design your systems. Simple ways to bake it in for everyone. For developers, just use keyboard for now. A lot of developers I know, they already do that. Same goes for light, dark screen modes. Use semantic elements as I showed you, right? Run Lighthouse. for designers, design at 200% zoom, color blind filters on, then you'll see the difference. Specify specific states for each control. So pay attention to details. For content creators, descriptive links, alt text. My favorite example, we don't have time for that, but describe Picasso painting to a blind person, like Guernica. It's a painting by Picasso. That doesn't tell me anything. You might as well tag it as, has no meaning, so do not even show it. Do not describe it to blind users because it has no meaning. Instead of that, describe emotional impact, what's on the picture. I mean, you can do, yes, you have to spend like 2-3 paragraphs, but it will convey some meaning. Okay, now back to the chopsticks. They are left-handed, and they are assisted devices. They started as assisted devices for people with different motor abilities, who cannot use right hand for whatever reason, or left hand, but they don't have grip and what's not. But they evolved as a learning device. And I love how sometimes in Asia, you have it from time to time, the language is super non-inclusive. Like they're not afraid to offend. Design developed for adults, foreigners, and rehabilitation therapists. I love how they separate adults and foreigners. So they put foreigners into kids categories, kind of adults and foreigners. But it's a learning tool. It's kind of interesting. So the problem is that we treat most of our digital stuff as right-handed only, and we create accessibility as special chopsticks. And we kind of strive for design. So it's a different mindset to me. Accessibility, it's all about, yes, we have to do it because it's illegal, it's compliance, we cannot afford to be sued, and so on. Inclusivity, it's more about expanding the reach. It's about did we forget anyone? Who has to work very hard? And can someone succeed without asking for help? So what I encourage people to do is to move from accessibility to inclusivity. So accessibility is a design quality, but when you move to inclusivity, accessibility comes natural. So inclusive feature becomes everyone's favorite feature. You not only cater for people with accessibility issues, and it's much cheaper to do it earlier as part of everyday grind. And it's very much measurable, and it's all about real people. So there's so much more I'd love to talk about, but thank you very much. I need to leave something for Mark to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks, George. That was great.
That was
I wasn't aware of the rendering in Chromium. That's really cool. With the blurred vision and things like that. That's
it
special.
Is right. I'm still staring at it. It's awesome. Like for testing, I'm now testing all the apps. I put them through that, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for George? Okay, I will take it as a note. There are some comments in the chat appearing. So thank you for.
I'll take a look. Thank you.
I did have a question as well. Whenever I can.
Oh, go for it, Bryce. Of course, go for it.
So we talk about inclusivity, right? We talk about being able to not just design for accessibility for very specific use case or need cases, anything that an individual may be going through, but more so, designing for everybody. Considering, I'm trying to think of a specific product, but the question then becomes, with like uprising in AI, for example, how well do you think AI can, especially, I see this a lot in the field, and people are developing UI instantly, but I also feel that eliminates the inclusion aspect of things. And so I kind of wanted to get to kind of tickle your mind a little bit. Tell me what you think about stuff like that.
It's interesting. As a kind of I had a good example of vibe coding. The post is coming on LinkedIn, but for those of you who can't wait for LinkedIn post, hold on a sec. I'm just putting the link to GitHub repository. You know that Entra checkbox, which dialog that comes up and says, "Would you like to stay signed in?" The most annoying dialog in the world, right? And someone posted every 3 months. Someone posted, so I created a browser add-on that basically dismisses this dialog. And I created it's multilingual and what's not. And one of the things I paid attention to, how well accessibility feature, it's a small window, it's a prompt, HTML prompt, and the options. And I paid attention to that. And I added to my prompt, it's entirely vibe code. I didn't type a single line of code. I entirely driven it through prompts. One of the prompts in Claude was one of the instructions is to make the tab order right, and a set of instructions to make the tab order right and make it accessible. So that's basically how you drive AI. AI is aware, and I'm quote unquote, very much aware of the guidelines and how to create appropriate input. Like, for example, for numbers, it's like number of milliseconds delay before dialog is dismissed. It's a number control. It did create control without extra prompting. It knew it's a number, and it's kind of new. But it is aware, and you can raise this awareness if you're targeting a specific group of users. You can raise this awareness a little bit through prompted. So very much so. So it's actually much easier for AI to be aware of that when generating code than for a human. So we're on a good path here. You just need to be aware of that. But it's accessibility. AI cannot be inclusive. It cannot design things to be inclusive. That's kind of important difference, and that's what I'm getting at. It's about inclusivity.
For sure. Yeah. I appreciate your insights, man. Thank you. It's always good to hear from good minds.
Good question. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your question, Bryce. So if that's okay with everyone, I would like to move to our second speaker for today. I'm just conscious of time. So our second session is a bit different than usual. So instead of having our usual speaker slot, I would like to reflect on where the world of building Power Apps solution is heading. So as we watch AI reshape how we design, build, and deliver experiences, I couldn't think of anyone to explore that transition with better than Mark Smith. Mark's work from Clover Base to the Center of Trustworthy AI, his 90 Days Mentoring Challenge, and also his recently released book on Microsoft 365 Copilot adoption places him right at the center of what's coming next. So Mark, welcome to our user group, and thank you so much for coming. So let's dive into some of the questions we would like to ask you today. You've built your amazing career, and you've been guiding organizations for decades through major technology shifts so far. So how do you see the move from low code to So how do you see the move from low code to an AI-first Power Platform changing how we build apps and automations?
Awesome. Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think it unlocks a lot of opportunity. I think it unlocks the ability for a higher degree of accuracy. And what I mean by accuracy, I mean, through my career, I've been involved in a lot of projects and implementing software for organizations. Oftentimes, things like UI, UX was the last consideration, particularly because I came from a model-driven world in the Power App, side with CRM. A lot of developers felt they didn't have any control over UX or UI, right? It was prescribed out of the box what was available. And so I think as we move and, with announcements by Ryan Cunningham and such around the enterprise vibe coding platform that the Power Platform is becoming, and it's kind of like code is coming right back into the mix, I think it's going to allow for us to have a lot more control over user experience for people. And so I think it opens a lot of opportunity. I think the risk is a lot of traditional makers and developers that have worked on the Power Platform. I use the term developer very broadly, not just meaning, you could take somebody that configures, somebody that does low code, or somebody that writes code for the Power Platform. I think it's going to allow a lot more breadth of what is possible to create, and especially on the user experience, if the maker chooses to actually learn the skills of UI and UX. Rather than just saying, hey, that's out of my control and it's left with the platform. Original project that I worked on years ago in New Zealand for the New Zealand government, for example, and we used to, back in the day, before we had the Power Platform, we used to butcher Dynamics CRM and turn it into other applications. And so this particular agency, it was the trade commission of our country, and so operated in geographies all around the world. And they did, it wasn't a sales tool that they wanted. And what traditionally was done in interface design is that anytime you created a new entity in the system, is that it would create a little cog icon. And the cog icon was just the standard experience. And bad design of that interface was there would be thousands of these cogs, and so many people were using the icon as a visual indicator, and even color as a visual indicator of areas that they want to be in the system, and none of that was built in. So it created a massive resistance. And I got really heavily at that point into how good the interface looks at any time. And I think where we're going is going to bring back that ability to create customer experiences like never before, and that we will be able to stretch outside the metaphor that we currently use of, potentially just a browser-based or a mobile experience.
Okay, that's a very interesting point of view. Thank you for sharing that. So with the AI starting, obviously generating the screens and flows data models, what do you think will be the new responsibilities fall on us as designers, architects, or makers?
I think the new responsibility is to think a lot more about the experiences that we're creating. I'll give you a couple examples here. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Interesting. Why I've got this guy up here. This podcast was recorded in 2021, and it was on interface design. It has been out of the 750 podcasts I've recorded, this is my most successful listen, download podcast. So you can see a lot of people take design very seriously. I think Barry was located in France from memory. I recorded it in 2021. And so it's a really important topic, but I just want to give you some examples of interface. Here's a product called UX Pilot. Has anyone used it at all? No? So this interface, if you looked at it long enough, you can tell that it isn't actually a model-driven app, although it looks very similar to it. And if you look at my prompt, I did a single-shot prompt to come up with this interface. And UX Pilot doesn't have any reference to Microsoft, but you notice that it's fully interactive, this interface design. AI totally generated this 100% over a single prompt that I put in to the system. And how this came about, I had a colleague in Australia working for the New South Wales state government, where George is, and the New South Wales government wanted a system for what's called the freedom of information. So somebody in the public can make a freedom of information request from the state government, and they needed to follow through a process. And of course, this is 101 model-driven app development territory. He was able to take the RFP document, feed it into Claude, and Claude define what the interface should use in the context of the Power Platform. So using all the any specification that Microsoft out there, for example, around Fluent, etc., and reproduced this that he then put into the RFX document showing how all these interfaces could work, and they were all just single prompts. He didn't get, a maker to simulate all these interfaces and then take screenshots. And I think this is an example of where AI is really going to enter the scene powerfully, because you could take any of this. I could then prompt against this and say, and talk about all the usability features and standards that needed to be incorporated. And I could test this before handing it off. And by the way, the output of this can be output into Figma, and it can be ingested into Dynamics, the Power Platform, whichever tooling you're using as part of it. So it really opens up a lot of new frontier in the accuracy that I think people can create user experiences with, and making it super compliant. So you can take a persona of a visually impaired, or, my biggest challenge with UX is audio. So I use Speechify because I'm actually I learn via my ears, as in primarily. And what I've found is so many documents, web pages, and software struggle with a screen reader reading the content because of the stuff you don't see visually, but is embedded in the code behind. So, for example, I'll often get it saying, this is an H1 heading, or this is an H3 heading. And I'm like, that's irrelevant to the piece of content you're reading to me, but it's describing all that detail. And it's not all the time. It's just in, when the UI was not designed for an auditory experience, it actually breaks down at that point. And like George said, it's fundamentally that there's an extra cost, there's an extra level of testing and validation if you're going to make software super usable. I never had a problem with this in the past, but in the last 3 years, I've used this product called Speechify, and now in AI, I have particularly targeting using voice as how I interact with AI. So I want to reduce my keyboard input and use voice and have it read back to me a lot more. And so I'm finding this prevalence and need for interfaces to be readable, as in screen readable, is becoming super important in the experience for the end user. And I'm going all over the place, Sarah. Sorry about that. Hopefully get your question answered.
No, actually, you did answer my question. Thank you so much. So moving smoothly and connecting to the session that George organized for us as well. So how do you see the AI impacting the accessibility standards? Do you think it reduces some barriers, or does it introduce any new risk that we should be aware of, or a bit of both?
I think it gives you the ability to validate and test rapidly for different persona types that you wouldn't necessarily have in your team. So visually impaired, there would be an ability to create a reference piece of knowledge around everything that a visually impaired person struggles with. There's a lot of documentation, and then I believe you could write an agent that could validate anything you did for visual impairedness. And then you could do it for left-handedness. You could do it for any number of disabilities, vision, hearing impairment, etc. And I think that it will enable teams to
just call left-handed a disability?
To do tests that my wife's left-handed, so hopefully she didn't hear that, George. It would allow, for people to test scenarios that you might not have represented on your team, but you want to create compliance. And like when the time George and I have been in this game, as in we used to fight just to get the web standards recognized in the user interface, right, George, years ago. Like Microsoft didn't used to support standard, web interface usability standards, which every government agency always asked for because they had to be compliant in that respect. At least Microsoft has done a lot in more recent times in that respect. So I think AI is going to open up lots of opportunity. But here's the other thing. I believe that the Chroma experience that we have now, I think is going to disappear. As in, so interface, I think things like even the mobile phone, will we have number of apps, or will we just have a single interface that generates on the fly, not just based on our question, but based on the data types, et cetera, we're doing with will it represent the data appropriately for what the output we're trying to achieve at any time? So I think things like menu items and even, the kind of grid layout forms over data, as James Phillips used to say all the time, I think that potentially in the coming years is going to be way, way, way different than what we've traditionally come from.
But do you think it will also happen across Power Platform? So as the builders will be more moving towards configuring agents than configuring apps? Is that the overall prediction?
You've opened up a bugbear I have with the whole agent area. I think agents are overhyped to what they can do now, and at the moment, to configure or build an agent takes more time than potentially more time than the value I get back in return. And so I'm looking for the day where I can prompt an agent into being without having to validate and test all its data sources and things like that. At the moment, it seems to be a lot of effort to get the output of an agent, which is not really that much more intelligent than an automation. I'm hoping that we'll get to the day that we'll take something like Power Automate Desktop and we'll be able to click record, and let's say I did that for email for a month, and also it didn't do anything around editing my experience in working with email, but after a month, it would have recorded a whole bunch of patterns that I do with email, and then I'd like to have a conversation with it about how can I hand off more of that load to AI than do it. Now you take that's email, you take any type of business process, if it could record you, understood the gaps and how you're thinking about your workflow and your process, suggested improvements, and then maybe get to the point that says, do you want me to handle that for you? And would take more and more off our plate. I think that's a scenario that I would prefer for agents than the massive amount of configuration. In fact, I feel, and this is a controversial opinion, that Copilot Studio and Power Automate are all tools that will disappear in the next 5 years. And when I say disappear, they'll disappear from us using them as makers. They will be building blocks of software, but it won't be that we're using those building blocks. Our AIs will be using those building blocks to build solutions. So, the days of I'm a Power Automate expert, I think, are numbered. And because at the end of the day, the AI will be the expert on Power Automate, and it will not only be able to create the best automations, it'll be able to monitor those automations and in real time improve them at a pace that I don't think people ever will be able to do. So I think a lot of the tools that we've traditionally had in the Power Platform will start to move to the background, and we'll get way better prompting, and AI will get better understanding the outcomes that we're trying to drive. So I think I think it's going to change a lot, the tooling. And when I back to the Copilot Studio, I think we'll go from being able to prompt, let's say through Copilot, and it will build on Foundry whatever we need built, and we'll optimize and do all the kind of rigor that we would want in good software development without us having to do all that configuration. I think configuration is so overrated these days, and it's so much work is involved in configuration because of these very rigid designs.
Charlie, have a question? Go for it.
Yeah. So this year in Power Platform, we've seen so many new things introduced to us, but none of them being generally available yet. So things like the vibe.powerapps.com and code apps and stuff like that. What do you think we're going to see happen next year? Do you think those are going to become generally available and then we'll start using them? Or do you think we're going to advance quicker than that? So with regards to you talking about some things falling away, that kind of thing.
I think that, and I don't know, I've not had these conversations, I think the Power Platform team are in a massive scramble to sort out what the future world looks like. And so they're creating a bunch of demoware that they roll out at conferences that look well in demos. And hey, I'm the master, as through my career, I've built my entire career on good demos. And, you know, I would be fit into that classic category of demoing something that wasn't potentially buildable by developers. And I think that Microsoft is doing that at scale at the moment. They've got to have the buzz. They've got to have the new thing dropping. But it's kind of like, come on. Like, I think they don't know. And they're trying to work out what's going to stick. What do you reckon, George?
So,
let me unmute myself. I totally agree with the general concept. It's a struggle. Like in terms of they throw in a lot of stuff on the wall to see what sticks. And whilst it's easy for someone like Claude to focus on one thing only, because we're doing code and we're doing it better than anyone else, and kudos to them, right? Microsoft is by far much larger company, same as Google, right? They struggle to pick up where AI is going to make a difference and fundamentally would allow them to get ahead of others. And therefore, they throw everything on the wall. And Vibe, I think it's a little bit prematurely, but Microsoft had little choice but to show it. On the other hand, generative pages are generally available. They're good enough, right? So it's like we'll see evolution. That's renaming. A lot of renaming is because of that. So I'd say Microsoft is in a tough place, being a kind of multifaceted vendor. They're in a very tough place because of that. So is anyone else with the wider outreach like Google. That's and Apple. Apple AI story is complete disaster, right? So 100%. Far, it's like the guy quietly walked away, no doubt with generous package, but he just got fired this month. The AI chief, because it's absolute disaster. They license in for $1 billion a year. They now license in Gemini. So here you go.
So
that's my answer. So I totally agree. Yeah.
Good.
So are there any good or interesting stories you think you can quote that you think the Microsoft could or should learn from when it comes to any lessons, any things that other companies work on in the AI space?
Do you know what? I'm impressed with Google. You know, Google, I always felt had the massive lead. I've been to the DeepMind offices in London when my wife was working there, and I felt they were always ahead what they're doing with Alpha and everything. And then along came OpenAI, and kind of everyone was like, oh, they're going to absolutely eclipse. And I remember a Google exec saying at the time, hey, we're in the first second of a massive explosion of where tech's going. And then if you see Gemini 3, what's coming out, it's just like, man, Google is starting to hit their straps and really starting to execute now in this. I feel Microsoft is lacking the ownership of core AI, in that it is using other people's for everything, and And I know that Microsoft does have a whole bunch of, work on their own models and things, but they've gone to market with somebody else's brand, and I think it's potentially hurting them in the long term, where what I'm seeing now from Google is, and I don't know if you've watched recently the Google movie around DeepMind. It's on YouTube, I think it is. It's a documentary. And I tell you what, after that, so my action, I just canceled my $200 a month OpenAI subscription. It'll expire on the 9th of January, and I've had it since day dot. So I don't know, it's over a year I've been paying that invoice. I've dropped back to the $20 because I'm going to pay around $400 a month for all Gemini, and I'm going to go and explore for the next 3 months everything around Gemini, because I think their story is actually so much more robust at the moment, and they're executing better. I feel right now in market. So I think Google has a great story, and I've never been a Google fanboy.
I love your 1 second comparison. Brings to mind there is a clip somewhere. I should bring it into, and I should give it to you because you can show it with that story. There's a clip of a marathon race, start of a marathon race, right? And everyone lines up at the start like elite people who run like just over 2 hours or around 2 hours, right? And there's a guy sprinting out of the blocks. Wrong. He obviously, judging by skin color, he didn't grow up in the place where it matters. He's not Kenyan. He's like a white boy, but he's sprinting. And basically the comment was like, I don't care if I finish this or not, but I can now put it on the wall. I was leading a marathon race for, right? Yeah. Because he was for 500 meters. Then he just dropped out because you can't keep up with those guys, right? But for 500 meters, he could put like, yes, once I was leading, I was overtaking elite runners. I was ahead of them. Yeah, for about, 1 minute. Yep, he was. So I love this. And that's what's happening with a lot of vendors right now. Yeah. But Google caught up. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, and that's why I recommend go watch the doco, because their thinking is very scientific around this, less marketing hype. And that's that scientific rigor, because I think we've just had so much marketing BS. And, Microsoft's always been the master at telling a story before a reality exists. And OpenAI and even, Anthropic to some degree, they're hitting on fair narratives and things like this about mass layoffs and whatnot to drive this hype cycle that we're in. But yeah, I'm impressed with what I'm seeing from, as I say, Google at the moment. And I think a lot can be learned from them. And here's another crazy fact that when I was researching the book, I was always under the impression that around 82% market share in the world was on M365, right? That people used Office. Do you know what it actually is? It's about 48%.
I do.
That's a lot less than the 82 that all in my Microsoft circles was always quoted. And guess who makes up the other massive percentage in that? Google Workspace. And so for all us, and I've been embedded in the Microsoft ecosystem for 30 years, and sometimes you start to drink the Kool-Aid, but it's only as you do external research with other providers that you realize, that it's not necessarily, just a Microsoft story in the corporate world. And when you see figures like quoted at Power Platform Community Conference and stuff where they say, 98% of all Fortune 100 companies have that are using Copilot, that means one dude opened up the Edge browser that had the tab for Copilot on, and they worked at Johnson & Johnson. Boom, Johnson & Johnson's a user of Copilot. We can claim that name now. And it's like, they're probably all those percentages, they're all probably the same percentages in Google as well. So it's, lies, and damn statistics, isn't it? So it's, you got to balance that.
Very interesting. So Mark, you mentioned your book. So congratulations, obviously, on the releasing your book. Is a massive milestone. I have a question on that. Your book leans into the cultural readiness. So my question is, how important is culture when AI is influencing the way we design user experiences?
When at MVP Summit last year, this lady was speaking called Caruana, and Caruana in Microsoft is responsible for adoption of M365. So not just Copilot, but of course, Copilot has become part of her remit. And she said something very interesting. She said, in the pandemic, Microsoft Teams went through the roof in adoption, right? And it was a external factor, not good people selling. It was an external factor. Everyone got locked down, and it caused Microsoft Teams to take off because we needed a way of communicating in the workplace. But she said nobody was worried that Teams was going to take their job. And she said, with the media hype around AI, for the first time, people are worried that AI is going to take their job. So when it's introduced in the workplace, they are asking themselves, either out loud or not, am I training my replacement and I don't realize it? And so there is this cultural disconnect between what has been done, and then you get cavalier managers and leaders saying, yes, we are going to downsize. As in New Zealand, there's the largest telco company, and they made it clear to their staff so I talk about the Rogers adoption curve. And so you get your people that are keen from the start. They're mavens. They want to, typically MVPs. They want to touch everything that's new, through to your laggards at the other side of the adoption curve. And this company said, listen, if you're a laggard, if you feel that you sit in here that you're not going to adopt AI, there's the door. See you later. You can leave. And it's such a short-sighted way of engaging. I just interviewed a lady the other day in a major law firm in the US who lost her job, and she had been there 20 years, and they said, AI is replacing all this part of our business now, so you're not needed. And she said 2 months later, they went back and hired her on contract as well as all her colleagues, because out of the organization walked all this tacit knowledge that wasn't documented, knowledge that existed and is not in a repository. And it's kind of like the way we do things. And I think that there's a short-sightedness of laying people off. And one of the quotes I love of Meg is that a CFO loves the concept of downsizing, right? So if I can reduce headcount and I'm a CFO, I'm excited about that. And if you're a manager and you're going, hey, I can reduce my headcount by this, that CFO is going to take that money that was going to your business unit and they're going to appropriate to some other part of the business. The problem is that doesn't mean you're getting it to spend on the AI for your business unit. So be very cautious about using the lever of letting people go to justify a short-term gain, because that budget will probably never come back to your team. So, I think there's a whole lot of work that can be done around culture, but the problem is, and I highlight this in the book, is that people don't care what you say about culture. They remember how culture is being. And one of the big challenges of change management in the organization, and you go, we're going to do a change program. We're going to, install champions. They remember the last software rollout you did as a company and your lip service you paid to change and adoption. And they go, I can hear what you're saying, but I can't hear the words. I can see your lips are moving, but I can't see the words. And that's how a lot of employees are looking at the rhetoric coming from leadership, is that what they are culturally saying they do and what they do is very different, and that creates massive challenges around adoption and organization. And that's why some serious thinking and working and almost training of particularly the executive level and what comes out of their mouth and does it align with their actions is so important.
Thank you for that. Another interesting angle and food for thought. So I'm conscious of time. If that's okay, I do want to ask one or two more questions, especially this one around the 90-day mentoring challenge. I'm one of the alumni. I highly recommend. The mentoring challenge is very, very famous in the community as well. So one of my favorite modules is the one on the UX and design. So I would like to ask you, and we exchanged some thoughts about it before, but I would like to ask you, why do you think that the UX education is so important, and is it more important now while the AI is evolving and influencing our design process?
One reason it's so important is because people die when it's not done well. And that's, one of the books I recommended there was probably the best book I've ever come across on UX and UI, where one of the techniques around user experience, and I'll talk about user experience rather than user interface, is asking the question, what's called the 5 whys, which kind of came out of Toyota as a concept. And he gives an example. There was a jet in the US Air Force where a pilot crashed a multi-million-dollar jet into the ground with loss of life. And when the investigation happened, why did it crash? Pilot error was it, and he was one of the investigators to come in. So he said, so why was it pilot error? Well, the pilot didn't pull up when he should have pulled up. So he said, why didn't the pilot pull up when he should have pulled up? Well, he was unconscious. Hang on a second. So why was he unconscious? Well, we had the way a certain part of the cockpit had been designed meant that when this number of Gs were pulled, the oxygen level dropped in the cabin of the aircraft, therefore meaning that the pilot didn't have enough oxygen. And, well, hang on a second. You said it was pilot error, and you're dealing with an unconscious pilot because of a failure in the design of the cabin structure for this. But, of course, and he's talking about but nobody wants to learn, like, why all those, the interface of what it is. And there's been other cases where, things have been shot out of the sky and whatnot because of an interface console just not being, or the labeling not being right, or the protection to make a mistake has not been done well. Now, I give those as extreme examples, but we can apply it in any area of life, as in, why was the plane delayed? Well, the ticketing counter was backed up. Why was the ticketing counter backed up? Well, the customer service agent didn't get there to 10 minutes late. Well, why were they late? Well, the other flight ran over. And so, like, as you unpack these things, the original reason of why things are not necessarily what they are. And I think that's critically important. The other thing I'll say that came up a lot in my career is that consultants that put stuff in the interface because the customer asked for it. And the job of the consultant is to go, we can do it. That's possible, but is it the right thing to do? So, it used to be that, and particularly in Dynamics days, that you could make a field either business recommended or business required, right? I mean, have a blue cross or a red tick. And so management will go, well, we're going to force people to fill out all these fields. And of course, what do people do? They just hit the full stop on their keyboard on every field that they didn't know the answer to. They pass the validator, and the problem with passing the validator, they just put dirty data into their system. And I saw this constantly, and that consultants wouldn't push back or wouldn't, say the yes was yes, we could technically do it. It wasn't, is it the right thing to be doing though? And this was also where you'd get form sprawl, big, long scrolling forms where you'd get 30, let's say 80% of all the fields weren't compulsory, and then one down the very bottom was a compulsory field. So someone goes to save and the form won't save. Why isn't it saving? Because there was one, field that required it. And so the whole form and UI design becomes really important to, can I capture the data that I need? And should I be capturing data that already pre-exists in another part of the system? Because I should be programmatically calling that data if it already exists rather than getting a person to put it in twice. I became very frustrated with what could take with sloppy user experience design could add hours of just mind-numbing work to the people for the next 10 to 15 years that worked with that interface because it just wasn't thought out. And I think my biggest concept here would be the term empathy. Have you empathized with the person that's going to use this interface 3 years from now that are doing it as part of their everyday job? Are they cursing you, the software developer, for that interface design because, you didn't empathize with them?
That was great. I think, yes, so I don't have any more questions for you, Mark. Thank you so much. I appreciate you
Ask your last question. What do you need to do next year in 2026? George had a 2026 challenge.
Okay, that's fine. If you're ready for it, that's absolutely fine. Sorry, I thought I'm going to skip it. So yes, if you could give the community one challenge to prepare for 2026, what that would be?
Don't set any goals.
Don't set any goals.
Don't set any goals, but set up experiments. Become a scientist in every part of your life, which is create a hypothesis and test it. And so rather than going, so for example, when I was living in London, one year I read like 82 books in a year, and my goal was to read a book a week for the year, and that was massively, it involved massive discipline on my part to be able to do that. Now, and so, you know, I use techniques like double the speed of audiobooks that I'd read the Kindle and listen to the book at the same time, double the speed. That helped me retain. But now I'm going, I want to consistently, for the next 90 days, read 10 minutes a day. So in other words, I've stopped with a goal, the big, often we set ourselves unattainable goals. And what I've done is gone to activity-based and consistency. Just 10 minutes a day reading. And it's not about completing a book. It's about really sitting with the concepts that I'm learning rather than completing yet another book and being able to go, wow, look at my stats, you know, that I've done. So my thing would be experiment in everything. Experiment in what works for you in the time you get up, you know, and start your day, in the way you create interfaces. Experiment but only commit, let's say 10 days to something, or 2 weeks or something like that. Do short experiments so that you start getting a broad exposure to a lot more than just your current work environment. So think of personal life, business life, everything. Micro experiments and see what works for you, because what works for me might not work for you. So that's, my advice. Don't set big goals, but just do lots of experiments.
Is that because the world is changing so much at the moment that you think that's important too?
It's not just that. It's that we get on the treadmill of someone else's plan for our life, right? And generally it's your employer's plan for your life, right? And you don't take the time to go, is this really what I want to be doing? Like I see so many consultants in the BizApp space that they get to 5 years and they realize year 6 is just the same thing as last year, maybe just a different project name, but they're not really learning. And if you look back at the last 4 weeks and you can't define what was different or what made you happy or what changed for you, you're probably living somebody else's repetition cycle and not challenging your own. And you don't want to get to George's age and find you haven't done everything that you wanted to do.
Are you
George is the same age as me, by the way.